Hi, it's Leah from Invoke Spirit here, and I'm a medical intuitive and healer. This is the last of the medical intuition series, and today I wanted to talk about what constitutes a good reading and a bad reading, and how to get the most out of a reading if you choose to get one. And so when I use the term good or bad, what I'm really meaning is useful or not useful. And for the useful things, aka a good reading, if someone came along to get a clear idea what's going on with their health and receive guidance about that, then the information needs to be clear and have context. It not be some random or vague stream of information by the end of the reading. It's not that there shouldn't be any vagueness or randomness, because that's the nature of intuitive readings, but as long as the reading progresses, and especially by the time you conclude the reading, then it's clarified what the pertinent points are, and that is useful information for the person to take away and use. There's also a need on guidance of what's next, right? I haven't had any that many medical intuition readings that weren't from my own style, but there were times that I did, and it wasn't that they weren't accurate, and there was definitely information that came through that was accurate or proved itself to be accurate later on. So it wasn't that they were incorrect, but it was more, I left the reading thinking, what do I do with this information? And in those situations, I was already trained as a holistic healer. I had access to a lot of knowledge, resources, but I still felt this uncertainty or lack of clarity about my next steps. And so that's really important, to have clear next steps to take, because otherwise you wouldn't be coming for a reading anyway. And then another thing that is useful in a reading is that it is focused on helping with what the person came for. This is greatly dependent on how the session and the relationship was set up. Also the communication between the reader and the receiver. Sometimes you do get curveballs, and some things are more important that need to come through, but it's also just as important that the communications are kept open, the communication channels are kept open between the reader and the receiver, and also that the receiver feels like they got the answer that they were looking for, or at least they're satisfied. And sometimes, unless that communication happens, the person might leave and not say so. So it's really important that the reading is focused on what the receiver really wants. For things that aren't useful, vagueness, I sort of talked about that before, right? Unclear information, basically random bits of information that aren't consolidated in some way. It kind of, to be fair, like there's so many different types of medical intuition readings. We talked about it previously, and some styles are more focused on the problem that's presented by the client, rather than other styles which are more like an overall scan. And some clients do come for the reading just wanting something that they need to know about that they might not be aware about. So a scan would be really beneficial for them, versus one where it depends on the person being quite specific, or the reading is better, the reading is more clearer and more potent through someone being really clear about what they want read about. But at least regardless of that, the information should be specific enough for the receiver to have clarity on what's going on. It's also not useful if the reader has a lot of predefined beliefs that might get in the way of the information that's coming through. So it's important to channel what's needed for the receiver, rather than filter through or impose perhaps the reader's belief systems. For example, like a good example is if someone is anti-medical system, but for that particular receiver, it's really important that some type of medical procedure is necessary, and that's not always the case. And but there are cases where it is the case, and so it can get in the way and not really serve the person. If those predefined belief systems are roadblocks to the information that wants to come through, you would hope that the reader has developed enough that they can bypass those roadblocks. But if it's not talked about, if the receiver is not aware of that, because the receiver won't be as trained necessarily, so then if the receiver's aware of that, then they could discern the information. They can categorize and understand and sort of see what's happening. But if the kind of person who blatantly believes what the reader might be saying, then there is always that the chance that could happen. So most of my readings combine health guidance of things where people can do things personally, or they could go seek natural therapies, and that's kind of where my work has slanted towards as well. But on occasion there will be a person who gets action to seek medical guidance, and usually that's a situation that's unique to that health condition or their particular body as well. And what I found when I was first developing my medical intuition style, I had a lot of those beliefs that I'd picked up through teachers and colleagues that are hung around, also through personal experiences and things like that. So I was quite jaded about the medical system. But then as I started piloting and working through my style of medical intuition, it was starting to filter through and really opened my eyes. And also I found that this modality has now loosened my views about that, and helped me come to a sense of peace that it's not so black and white as maybe I had held before. So rather than it being this is right and that's wrong in a very generalized way, it's more about what's beneficial for this particular person, and then that advice may not be relevant for someone else. Another example is our beliefs around, there's some beliefs you hear where all diseases stem from the gut, or all diseases are emotional based, as if there's only one root cause. But if you really think about it, we're multifaceted beings, so you would think that likewise there'd be multiple root causes that could occur. And so being too dogmatic about those things could really hinder the information and the potency of the information that wants to come through for that person. And then another thing that's not useful is when the reader holds back on what really needs to be said. So as a receiver, you may or may not know when this is happening, but also you may receive information that you might not want to hear. And there's a lot of things that we don't want to do in health, even if it would serve us, but I mean, me included. But and sometimes you don't want to find out that the things that you're doing is actually making things worse, but that's not always the case. But for a good percentage of people, that can be true. So whether you use the information that you don't want to hear, that's up to you, but it really is up to the reader to say what needs to be said. And if they're in service to your health intentions, that may include things that you don't want to hear. Okay, so we're clear that's some things that are useful and not useful in a reading. Let's discuss how to get the most out of a medical intuition reading. And truthfully, this is not just about having not just about medical intuition readings. It could be to getting the most out of any session with a healer, a practitioner, a psychic, a coach. But I will keep it more geared towards lines of health because that's what we've been talking about here. So I've got a couple of points, one of them being one thing that will really help is to decide that you're going to benefit, regardless of how skilled the person is, how detrimental or difficult your situation is. If you make the decision that you're going to get the benefit in some way, that will aid the session to be better. In any sessions that I have now with healers, practitioners, even if I saw another medical intuitive, and I've seen many different practitioners over my whole life, from very young age to now. Even if I don't get immediate results or things don't turn out how I expect, I've decided that I would get the benefit of what's needed regardless. And so that benefit may occur before the session, during the session, or after, but to hold that premise or attitude that you're going to receive it, then you can stay open to benefits or gold that might be coming through. There might be insights that come just by mixing your field and intention with another person. And, to assume that the benefit of your session is dependent on the skill of the person or the timing or how easy it is to solve, that can be really disempowering and disheartening to have that attitude. So yeah, it's like, and also I used to definitely put the blame on the practitioner unconsciously. And so then in the end, I wouldn't see them person for more than one session. And then that would prove to me that things didn't work and things like that. So I caught on to my patterns and the way that my attitude, and I decided that I was going to take responsibility back to myself and just decide that I would get the benefit regardless of the conditions that are around me. Another thing that would help get the most out of a session is to remember that you're the main decider of your health. Excuse me. You're the main decider of your health. So if something doesn't feel right for you, if you're uncertain with what's suggested for you, you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. And you can take time to sit and think about it before and find a way that it would come into alignment before you do that. You're the one that is ultimately going to live with your health. And if you take suggestions from others, you're the one who's going to take the consequences, whether beneficial or non-beneficial, from those actions. So in the end, to remember that you get to decide what things that you're going to do for your health, and that you don't have to take on anything that doesn't feel in alignment or uncertain for you, because that can lead you down some dangerous rabbit holes if you have that attitude. Another thing is to be clear on your outcomes. So if there's certain things about your health that you want to find out about, be really clear with yourself, and then also communicate that with the person you're getting the medical intuition reading from. Why waste your time, money, resources on miscommunication and even going with the flow. It's okay to, I'll talk about later, to be open, but at the same time being really clear and holding those intentions can really help not just you but the reader to make sure that you get the most out of that session. If you're unclear, ask about it. If anything's vague in a session, feel free to ask about it. Maybe the person might be might get upset, or some people maybe don't like to be questioned, but it is your session. So, and if you feel unclear, why can't you ask about it? Another one is to be clear, but, also be open. So this means that you don't need to agree with everything, but at the same time, most people don't really come to get read on things that they already know about with their health. So you might get things that you do know in the session, but then the reading is to expand your awareness in a way that will serve you to move towards health in some form. So hopefully that expansion happens immediately, but for others it might take time, like weeks, months after reading, before a light bulb hits. So you don't have to go against yourself, but at the same time remain open. Do your best to stay open, transparent, because the effects of the reading if you have a wall, then the person has to read through or around the wall, and it's not impossible, but it does make the information a little bit more jilted. So it does help if you stay open, but also balanced with, you don't need to do anything you don't want to. You don't have to agree with everything, but just stay open. And then finally, if you're clear on what action to do next from the reading, then do it. To get the most of the reading is not just to get the reading, though there can be healing that comes with words, but also to take the action, do whatever you can as soon as practical. And if it makes sense to you, resonates, just make it a priority and take the action that's required to fulfill the reality for yourself. Okay, so that's all for today's segment and the rest of the series. So if you want to find out more about my style of medical intuition, you can visit invokespirit.com/medical intuition. There's also information on there about the styles that I have. Maybe you just want to get down to the root cause or causes about your own health issue and understand your health from a greater perspective. There's information about the medical intuition package on the page, and you can always book in for a free 30-minute chat to discuss your health history and see if my style might suit your situation. So check out invokespirit.com/medical intuition. And I hope this series has been enlightening for you. Thanks for listening, and wishing you the very best of health. Bye.